Well, here we are, live from Boston, Massachusetts, and it's the Green Rush Live. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm David Rabinovitz.
And David, did you know that this is an anniversary of sorts of ours?
Yes, it is, Jimmy. This is our 1-year anniversary of the show.
That's right. I at last check, and Lord knows I didn't count them all, but about 50 shows in a year. I think we took 2 weeks off over a total year, and we've been doing it live for a full year from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern now. And I want to, first of all, go on record as saying thank you for being very diligent and committed to the future of this program. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome, Jimmy. You'll be hearing from my agent. I need new hair, new makeup. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, I certainly know that you do need a little help. And luckily, as you know, a plastic surgeon has moved in below our world offices here in Wellesley, even though as you look at the screen, it doesn't look like I'm in my office. It actually is from the New England Cannabis Convention in the Heinz Auditorium in Boston, the first face-to-face cannabis convention going on right now in Boston. And that's what you're looking at is footage from today's show that I would say was a pretty darn good turnout for the first day. And we're looking forward to getting back there tomorrow and talking to some more people, about 300 vendors. And I will say there's a huge sense of relief among the vendors and among the people that I've talked to on the floor. And we'll continue to have different footage, if you will, video footage from the show going on behind me. And if we can ever figure out David's situation, we'll get it behind him as well. But we're not fooling anyone. We're not at the show now, but we were there earlier. Okay. Did we set that up good enough? I knew we did. Hey, all the more reason to bring in our first guest, and a guy who's been with us fairly regularly over the last year, and someone we really want to thank for that commitment. His name is Michael Correia. He's the Director of Government Relations for the NCIA. Michael, thank you so much for joining us again here today.
Hey, thank you. And honestly, you had me fooled. I thought you had a live feed going on behind you at the show. So you got me fooled. Good going. I'd like thank you. 1-year anniversary. I feel honored that I get to be on for this. But my question, how's the weather up there? And are you going to a Red Sox game if they're in town?
So to be honest, the Red Sox, let's see, I believe this weekend they're on the road in Chicago. Because, needless to say, I still read the sports page first in Boston. I'll admit that. Okay. I do feel like I'm on top of the cannabis scene, but for the most part, when it comes to escape from the real world, I still am a huge sports fan. And it is amazing to think that the Red Sox are actually in a pennant race. And as far as the weather goes, it's been actually one of the best weeks of the summer, the last week or so, here in the New England area. And I know the rest of the country has really had a tough time of it. Did you get Ida as Ida, the hurricane, went by?
So we had it come through on our way up to the Northeast where it totally rained. It was windy. But I'll be honest with you, you just need a hurricane going through. It's been the most gorgeous weather the past week. Right. It's been great. I personally get depressed when Labor Day hits because I feel like summer's over, but it is some of the nicest weather out in DC. So I was enjoying myself outside today.
Fair enough. And I should also make a mention. Let me just see if I can maneuver here. Wait, I'm going to maneuver here. Oh, it figures. We were live streaming over my shoulder. It is live streaming 24/7 on procannabismedia.com. And I swear I thought my B-roll was long enough to last that, but that's okay. It is what it is. We're right outside the Accounting Buds booth at the New England Cannabis Convention at the Heinz Auditorium. And I'm sure there'll be a few people wandering through our video feed, as it were. Oh, there goes one now. Excuse me, sir. I'm doing a show here. Okay, Michael, you've had your vacation. September 1st has passed. You've analyzed 163 pages of the CAOA, whatever the official document is to legalize cannabis at the federal level. Did the NCIA put in a report in time, I guess is the question. And what did that report say as far as feedback goes from the industry on what is most important if we look towards cannabis reform, and will we see it in 2021 or two?
So a couple points. The first thing is, yes, we got one in. It was a scramble at the end, a lot of 12-hour, 15-hour days a lot of edits, rewrites, and question marks of multiple people getting stuff done. So we got it done. It's on our website. We have an executive summary that just talks very high view, big picture of what was asked of us, what we view like cannabis reform is needed, how we support cannabis reform, comprehensive reform, and at the same time, we support incremental reform like the Safe Banking Act, that there are minimum qualifications that should be in any reform bill. You know, the biggest thing is creating a system to where people want to be part of this market. Entrepreneurs want to participate, and the illicit market slowly disappears. And so it's not, you know, NCIA's position is definitely, you know, making sure entrepreneurs and small businesses have a chance to succeed in this industry. The last thing all of us want is you have legalization that support that, you know, benefits 5 companies. And what was all this fighting we were doing for all these years to just do that? So there's just that what we laid out in the executive summary. We reached out to our committee members, our policy council members, our board members, different membership levels, our diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, scholarship participants to answer very specific questions that the Hill was asking with their expertise. Some of the issues were official NCIA policy positions. Other issues we hadn't totally formed and completed, like, and made an official position, but they were proposals that were thrown out there as potential ideas. They weren't official NCIA policy, but we wanted to put those out there. Like, one of our committees or one of our subcommittees has this idea. It's something to think about. We did 32 pages of that, where it was very, very specific responses. And I wanted people to know, and we did a webinar after it to let the world know sort of what we were thinking and what we were doing. But the biggest issue people need to know is it's a discussion draft. They were out there to solicit comments and facilitate a robust discussion. I think that was the exact quote they were using. So NCIA is not officially endorsing this or opposing this. It is giving some recommendations. The endorsement and the opposition will come later on, depending on when they drop this bill and what exactly is in it. So my position has been, do they really want to have a discussion, or their eyes are closed and they want to give us lip service and they're going to do their bill regardless of what we think or what the outside world thinks? That will be determined on when they introduce this bill, which could be a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, who knows? And then once they introduce that bill, we'll relook at it, see how many changes were made, and then take an official endorsement position. But with that, you know, we had NCIA's chief economist, Bo Whitney of Whitney Economics. We asked him to do sort of a study on the economic part, the tax part. That's up there. It's on our website too. If you go through and link to it, you'll find it. But I just wanted to bring up a couple points that were concerning, troubling to us. And we all know how bad 280E is. Right. And when he looked at this from a tax perspective, he said it would be, even as bad as 280E is, the new tax system would be worse than 280E is now. So that already says, okay, you're not helping anyone out. It's still a penalty. The second thing is because of the taxes, it would drive out small and minority businesses and almost force consolidation into the market. Okay, that's not something we are looking for. Right. It would just overall increase the tax burden on the industry overall, not a good thing. And it would have domestic operators would have a disadvantage from international operators. And we all know this is the next great, industry, next great market. Do we want to have it to where now, some other company does this all better and none of our American businesses are thriving on something like this? So he put out a bunch of proposals as far as the taxes and the incentives on that and the behavior. And we know how you tax something can change people's behavior. And so that was very troubling to me. And I'm just being honest, if those provisions weren't changed, I could see us opposing something like that, because we're here to support small businesses. We're here to support entrepreneurship. We're here to allow the illicit market to disappear. Well, if consumers, you and me, keep going, well, these prices are too high, I'm just going to go back to the regular guy I was getting it from, then what good was all that? And you wouldn't get the tax revenue, and you wouldn't get the result you were looking for, and you'd have gray market, and you would have not the result you were looking for. So those are some of the big issues that we came up with in answering our questions. We gave responses to where we thought they should go, and we pointed out some of our concerns. And it is a 30-page document. I can't say everything that was happening here, but that was the biggest concern to me at the high level, was just the tax rate and how it's not going to make it better. Right.
David, I know you continue to monitor our chat room over there on our YouTube feed. I'm want to know if everybody is in there and checking it out while I keep traffic going here on the floor of the New England Cannabis Convention. Anything interesting in that chat room before we move on to the next question for Michael?
No question yet, but I will throw something up to see if somebody has a question.
Okay. So Michael, we all know that federal tax is almost that federal tax rate of 25% is a non-starter. There is already criticism of the current administration. I believe it was a finance committee member ripped President Biden recently in the media for non-action on the cannabis front. There does seem to be a groundswell of, hey, isn't this nice that we have this public discussion period, but like nothing's going on. I think they're getting a little frustrated with the leadership that's coming from the White House, but you're in the trenches. You have to deal with it, Senate to Senate, senator to senator, state to state. Are you starting to sense any kind of a turn? You had Bernie Sanders in Iowa this week at a town meeting talking about, we are making progress, but then he made a very pointed point about, but it's state by state, not at the federal level. Are we really going to see, do you still feel confident that something's going to happen at the federal level?
I'm not feeling confident, but when I think we did a phone call probably 8 months ago, or we did one of these shows like 8 months ago, and I said, I'm more optimistic now than I've been in 8 years, but it doesn't mean I think legalization or some type of reform is going to happen. Right. And I'll be honest with you, watching that, and we call it KOA, other people call it CAO Act. So, call it chaos, call it whatever you want. We call it KOA, so I'll use that acronym.
Okay.
During this whole process, it is a little eye-opening to how such a big, heavy lift this is going to be, and how many stakeholder groups are going to have to be part of this. And right. I've been in DC 25 years. For something really big like this, historic, to happen, you need stakeholder groups. You need a lot of momentum, the public behind it, and a lot of support. The public is supportive of this, but are they protesting on the streets? Are they calling members of Congress to say, do this now or else? Not really. And that's one big issue. The second issue, the White House is not signaling to Capitol Hill, get this right. done and get this done soon. Right. And, quite the contrary, they almost were like, hey, slow down. We don't want something like this. This is what we're thinking. So to me, I'm not being pessimistic. The conditions aren't ripe right now for something good, but the discussion is being had. You have the highest ranking Senate leader who is pushing his bill, who's having a discussion. And that in itself is important. So to me, like, the next big thing will be when this bill drops, whenever that is, how many co-sponsors are on it? And then what type of traction is this getting with advocates, with industry? What's the buzz around something like this? And if it's a non-starter and it's DOA and no one's talking about it, then we're going to have to pivot and move on to something else and then see where we go, whether that's incremental, whether that's the MORE Act, whether that's something else. But that's sort of where I'm at now. I just, honestly, I don't want to wait 6 months for that to happen. I would like it sooner rather than later, like in the next 2 months or something. So then right. we can have a strategy going into 2022.
Well, I would think that the leverage of the midterm elections is out there too. Is that a date that can be used to put some pressure on some either moderate Republicans or even those Democrats out there who continue to say, well, I don't know about this, and I don't want to name names. There's a few out there, but it's not as just because you're a Democrat, you're automatically pro cannabis on this bill. We do know that there's some people out there that some senators out there who are already resisting any kind of movement outside of a state by state issue.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is dependent on are their states going legal? Do they have medical in their states? Do they have adult use in their states? That will affect their decision on a lot of people, even though someone like Dianne Feinstein, of California, right. It's not affecting her. Right. But I think that's important. How many states are legalizing versus the election is getting people nervous and we need to do something. Now, with that being said, history is showing that this election is usually not good for the incumbents in power, first term presidential election. So that could bode badly for the Democrats, and they could start looking for issues that energize people and get people out. And this could be an issue, next June, July, August, September, that they really lift to the forefront and start pushing to try to get it over the finish line to energize, activists and young voters. That could possibly happen. But, and the big thing I look for is how many ballot initiatives and how many states are doing something like that. That's a good issue because it brings out some voters.
Right. I believe it's Ohio seems to be the next one that they're talking
about. I can't keep up. Is that going to be on the ballot?
2022. That was definitely in the news this week. Right. That the question is being written, and if there's one thing the industry has learned, make sure that the question is written properly. Right. I mean, what happened? Right. I mean, it's happened in other states and South Dakota still can't figure it out. Right.
For legal reasons. So it can actually get the courts can approve it if it gets challenged. And then just for political reasons. So people actually support it and want to go out and vote for it.
Right. Go ahead, David.
Michael, what do you think is going to happen first? A marijuana bill or the infrastructure bill?
Infrastructure, because that's everyone loves their roads, everyone loves their bridges, so that's an easy one. I could see, from a priority standpoint, and Congress has been in their August recess. You would think I would know when they come back, but during COVID, we can't go to the Capitol, so it's almost like, oh, they're back in session, great, because I can talk to people on the computer anytime. They're coming back from their August recess, and the federal budget the fiscal year is October 1st until September 30th, or however many days are in September. So that timeline is going to happen. The federal government will run out of money in the next 3 weeks. And between now and then, they are going to have to do a budget and they are going to have to do something. And that will determine sort of the direction where they're going with infrastructure and with some of these other programs, because they're going to have to do something in the next 2 weeks. And they tend to get stuff done at the 11th hour. So on September 30th at 11 p.m., they'll pass a budget or they'll do something like that.
So we've got a member of the finance committee calling out the president for not showing any leadership on the cannabis front at all. You've got the CAO bill out there for public discussion. What do we want? Do we want the public? Do we need to engage the public and say, get on your phones, call your senators and tell them to get off their schneid and push this bill? I mean, is that something that can be a grassroots movement of some kind?
So the answer is yes. To get it over the finish line, it's going to be needed, but the devil is in the details. And, should they pass cannabis reform? Yes. But do we need a regulations with that? Yes. And what does that look like? That's something that's dividing big industry versus the smaller businesses, is dividing industry versus advocates about, hey, listen, what should legalization look for? Do they just kick it to the states and have fun? Do they kick it to the states and add a regulatory component? That's something we're working at now, because I'll be honest with you, the public wants this, but we're not exactly sure what they're going to call and ask for. Are they going to call and say, pass more? Are they going to call and say, pass, KOA, or are they just going to call and say legalized cannabis, stop doing this? I don't know.
Right. I get you.
Whereas with other things, it can be easy. Call Congress, give me healthcare. Call Congress, pass an infrastructure bill. It's a little easier because they know everyone wants, their infrastructure bills. Cannabis reform, I'm not exactly sure they know what they want. They just don't want to get arrested for it. And they want to be able to buy it.
Right. So that if you decriminalize at the federal level, if the simplest thing to do would be that administrative move to get it off the Controlled Substances Act to somehow but is that an irresponsible move, or will it just kind of make it go away at the federal level and allow that to just go to the states? Or is that is too radical?
From a federal government standpoint, how many people are getting arrested by the federal government right now? Most of the arrests are happening at the state and local level, and that's sort of cooked into their constitutions and their policies. And so, you could do something at the federal level to allow the states to free it up, but the states can go in those directions. Like nothing's stopping a state right now from legalizing and decriminalizing and not arresting people, because that's where most of the arrests are. The problem is this isn't a commodity like tomatoes, as much as we want it to be. If you just made it legal, like now what? There has to be a regulatory component, because it isn't just like a computer chip or a pair of shoes or something, because it's nature as an intoxicant, a drug, a healthcare product, a pharmaceutical, lots of different areas that need to be worked out somehow, or there's just going to be a lot of gray area, and you're going to see issues pop up like you're seeing with Delta 8 and other things, that the science is going to be in front of the regulations, and it's not the best thing. We need to regulate it to make sure it's done right, and that's the biggest issue we're working at the federal government. I think we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves. There's issues Congress can be doing now to make it easier. And let's be honest, as long as they're not interfering with the states are going forward right now and doing some legalization, and that's good. Right. It's just not going as fast as I want it to go.
I don't think it's going fast as anybody wants it to go in the cannabis space, but that's a story for another day. Michael, we so appreciate you taking the time on a regular basis and joining us. We always enjoy to hear what's going on and what you're up against in the DC area. What is there anything that our followers and our people can do right now besides become members of the NCIA? Is there anything that we can engage people to do, like contact their local representatives from DC?
So one, I'm always going to push NCIA membership. We're doing an event in Michigan in 2 weeks. Make sure people go. We're doing our big annual conference in San Francisco in December. People need to be thinking about that going out. But checking locally to see, is their state already legal? If their state's already legal, they've done a lot, that's good. Looking through if there are federal officials in their states who aren't standing up. A perfect example, like people in California should be really hammering on Dianne Feinstein. Why she's not supportive of a multi-billion-dollar industry that has, 60, 70+% support, stuff like that. Where that's an easy lift to get someone like a Feinstein in a better place, and hearing from more of her constituents is important.
Right. Absolutely. And California is a good place. We have a lot of followers from California, which is bizarre, but it is what it is. We're trying to connect both coasts. No reason in the world why we can't. That's the thing about the plant. And I do harp on this a lot, is the plant is designed to bring people together. And here we have a country that is more divided than ever before. We can't even agree on a public safety issue about masking. Excuse me, sir. We're doing a show right now. Sir, excuse me. Anyway, I'm only kidding. I've been waiting to do that all show, by the way. And look, now if I move, check it out. There's our new show right there, live streaming at New England Cannabis Convention 24/7 on our website and what have you. So anyway, Michael, as always, a pleasure chatting with you. I look forward to talking with you again. If anytime, anything that comes up in DC and you really need an audience, now we've got one. Feel free to reach out, and our audience is your audience, and we appreciate your support.
Hey, thank you always for the time. And I guess I say happy birthday or happy anniversary.
It actually qualifies for both. September to me is a whole month of partying and celebration. You know, we throw in the Jewish New Year in there too, just for all my fellow tribesmen. So it's a good month. And as a soccer fan, American football, not American football. I watched Tom Brady. Yes, it was unbelievable. But that being said, soccer fan, it's also fall. And that is a great time of year. Anyway, Michael, always good to talk with you. I look forward to seeing you down the road, and we'll check back with you later. All right.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, there he goes. There goes Michael Correia from the NCIA. And of course, you can always check out what's going on in the world of the cannabis industry on their website as well. David, we're a little late for our 4:20 break. We'll fill you in on some developments on the show after this. Don't go away because it's 4:20-ish. We'll be celebrating that in our own way by playing our friend Jonathan Edwards' song, Shanty for You. And we come back on the other side with more business of cannabis talk. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, you know, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And you know, when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, "Cannabis has saved my life. Cannabis has changed my life." Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, "It's a whole new world of weed." But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience, and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Hey guys, this is Greg Borman, the Swiss Army Knife of Rev Clinics. Happy anniversary, Green Lush Live. Happy anniversary!
All right,
And
welcome.
back. Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, David, you go. Go ahead.
Okay, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Green Rush. And we're coming into our 4:30 segment. It was just a little bit too long on the 4:20, so we're running about 7 minutes behind, but that's okay for marijuana time. And Jimmy, back to you.
Are you insinuating, are you actually saying that people that use cannabis might be on a bit of a delay, David?
No, I'm suggesting that the cannabis space moves so fast that sometimes a week seems like a month and a month seems like a year.
All right, fair enough. And speaking of a year, it's been a year. We've done over about 50 shows of the Green Rush Live. It's the program that we are so proud of here, that we do a live 2-hour talk show on the business of cannabis every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Every week we're here, but this week has been a special week because we're also at the New England Cannabis Convention in downtown Boston, Massachusetts. It's the 6th annual NECAN event at the Heinz Auditorium in Boston. And people will be walking by near us as we continue to do our show. In fact, right behind us is let's see if I go this way, you can see that we're live streaming our regular live stream on our website, Pro Cannabis Media. But there's Rick Leneve at the Accounting Buds booth himself. His back is to us right now, but he's a CPA for the cannabis industry, and he's also a big supporter of Pro Cannabis Media. And you can see, look, there's the Rev Clinics infomercial, if you will, on our air. And Rev Clinics was so kind to us over the years, and of course, wishing us a happy anniversary. We appreciate that. But there's also a very special person that's celebrating a birthday this weekend at the New England Cannabis Convention. Her name's David Rabinovitz. She's the wholesale manager at Revolutionary Clinics and a good friend. In fact, one of the first people I met in March of 2018, when I went to the first New England Cannabis Convention, my first New England Cannabis Convention, where we actually started the podcast In the Weeds. And David, you know the history. That's how this whole network did get started. Was just an interview with a guy by the name of Stu Zakem, who is a PR guy in the greater New York area, New Jersey. He is the younger brother of the late, great Lenny Zakem. And of course, David, what huge little landmark has been named after Stu Zakem's older brother, Lenny?
The Zakem Bridge.
Attaboy. God, you are so sharp. You are so sharp. I love that about you. Can we talk a little bit about the last interview we just did with Michael Correia? I'm not that confident, really, to be honest with you, that anything's going to get done at the federal level, given the current political climate. Am I dousing the enthusiasm a little bit?
I don't think so at all, Jimmy. In fact, there was an article in Marijuana Moment yesterday. I just had it up on my screen during the break. Top federal financial regulator slams Congress over marijuana inaction.
Right. That's what I was talking to Michael about. He's a member of the finance committee. And, I think that some of the people in various committees in DC are getting upset by the inaction at the federal level, especially when you look at the public support for an issue that wants reform. And again, David, if you had to pick one thing that everybody in the cannabis industry would want to see happen, which is the one, if you had to pick one, which one is it?
That's a really hard question. So
That's what I do.
I would think if you're a leading MSO, you probably want full legalization because you can bring your costs down, expand, and grab more market share.
Okay.
If you are a social equity applicant, a small player at this point, you just want to see it decriminalized, but not necessarily legalized, because once it's legalized, I say this routinely. I don't think most people appreciate what the storm gates are going to look like when this becomes legal. All the big companies that are just going to jump in on it.
Right.
Right.
So what you're saying, if anything, descheduling. So if you had descheduling, it obviously opens up banks if you do that, right?
Oh, it may or may not. I've heard that some of the banks won't touch it because they do business internationally. But they won't touch it unless it's totally legal and we're out of all the drug treaties that have to do with marijuana. The flip side is if they deschedule it, I think you're going to see a whole bunch of the local regional type banks will jump on board. You'll have lending from banks. You'll have depository relationships that don't cost thousands of dollars a month. I think that would be a big game changer, without necessarily opening up the gates and letting the really big elephants come storming into the room.
Yeah, and when you say elephants, you really mean big pharma, big alcohol, right? Those companies.
Not even thinking about big alcohol, just the big companies. Think about what if Coke decides they're going to jump in and start to make cannabis beverages, right? CBD infused. Ben and Jerry's, which I think they're now owned by Unilever, they're going to start to have CBD and ice cream. I mean, you begin to think about some of the really big companies that could come in and they could crush small brands, right? You think about large beverage companies like Coke, right? They buy, I'm not sure if they own Arizona iced tea or which other brands, but when a company gets to be big enough, then the really big players will buy them. But you think about a large brand like an Arizona iced tea or a Sport Aid type drink, how big they are compared to a marijuana firm. The marijuana firms aren't going to be big enough for those kind of events. And the big guys are just going to come in and steamroll through the industry.
Speaking of little guys, did you know that our friends at Revolutionary Clinics are the #1 privately owned cannabis business in Massachusetts, according to Forbes magazine?
I didn't know that. That's hats off to Keith Cooper and his crew. They're obviously doing a good job there.
Yeah, they are. And it's the wholesale division that's driving the bus there. And we do know our pal Deirdre's involved with that, and we support that as well.
I think they're the largest wholesaler in the state.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And I believe they've doubled their amount of employees in a year. No, Keith's done a great job there, and not without plenty of bumps in the road, like any industry might have as they grow. Something happened this week, David, in media that got me quite perturbed, and we're going to be talking about it with a guest coming up in the last half hour of our show. But it had to do with a Canadian study that tied those who use cannabis with cardiovascular issues.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
Right. And NBC ran with it, and Fox ran with it, and CNN ran with it. And they made it into this big thing. And then if you read the actual report, you realized, first of all, this was an opt-in report. So you had to volunteer to enter into this report. This was not a controlled study. And they were basically saying the conclusions were that out of the, again, my numbers might be a little off here, 35,000 people who took part in this study, 1.7% of those who consumed cannabis regularly had a 0.5% more chance to have a cardiovascular or heart attack, 0.5%. And this became the headline of "Cannabis Causes Heart Attacks."
Yeah, but remember, Jimmy, what was the modality rate? You say 0.5%. You go, what's a half a point, right? That's a half a penny on $100 bill. But
Well,
if you
it's-
were starting with only a penny and a half, and
Yeah.
you threw in another half penny, that's a really big increase.
Right. We all get the percentage game, right? I get it. And in fact, at 5:30, when Brett Puffenbarger joins us, we'll go over this in more detail. But the point was causation versus correlation, right? And how many of the people that had these heart attacks were overweight? It doesn't account for that. You know, this is the problem with what's going on. And this is what bothers me so much about the media. They're only getting one side of the results, and that is from the substance abuse community. Now, I'm not saying there's a substance use community out there that, you know, has as many studies and lobbyists and research studies out there. No, they're not out there. They're just not. The media only wants to tell one side of the story that they're getting from the substance abuse community. And that's what bothers me, because you and I both know, we've both heard these stories of cannabis has saved my life. Cannabis has changed my life. Hundreds, if not thousands of times I've heard these stories, but no one's telling those stories out in the regular traditional media, just people who have an opportunity to have a platform on social media, because now the consumer is in charge of their use of media, when they watch it, how they watch it, and what they watch. So it has changed the landscape completely. If you're looking for a public service announcement about the benefits of cannabis in a legal state, you're not going to hear it. It just doesn't exist. They won't. I was encouraged. There's a booth of a traditional media outlet at the New England Cannabis Convention. Excuse me, sir. We're doing a show here. Excuse me, sir. Anyway, it's the same guy. He keeps doing loops, you know. But the point is, Beasley Media Group, okay, has a booth at the New England Cannabis Convention. To me, that's a really good sign, because it's a traditional media company that owns quite a few radio stations in the United States of America. They are starting to take CBD ads. You're not going to hear it on 98.5, the Sports Hub, but you are going to hear ads for CBD companies on the 98.5, the Sports Hub, but they are looking for content for their digital platform on their podcasts. Yes, we are in talks with Beasley Media, which is fun, exciting, and all this. Hasn't happened yet, but they're the only ones there. Will we see, David, coverage of the first in-person cannabis show on traditional NBC, CBS, ABC affiliates, or even my old friends at NECN? I really doubt it. Now, am I waving a flag that, you know, David, you know, that's the way it is right now, right? Well, you got to unmute yourself. I know your dogs were barking. It's okay. You still have to unmute yourself, unless you want me to just to keep going, which, by the way, I could do. You know that.
You can't control them. You can only hope to contain them.
That's the dogs or me?
You. I was just looking up Beasley Media to see how many radio stations they have.
Oh my God, hundreds all over the country. They're one of the largest media groups in America.
Yep.
But so do you agree with my rant? Would you like to see more mainstream media showing respect to the cannabis industry, or does the industry have to earn its respect?
I don't know whether, I think everybody has to earn what they get, though sometimes you have to take it to a degree. But I'm not as focused on the issue of the media coverage. I'm more focused on the real nuts and bolts of what the business is about and the risks. I'll give you an example. City of Cambridge, Massachusetts, did a great thing a couple of years ago. They decided they were going to give priority to social equity applicants.
Right.
And then they were sued by a large in-state operator. We don't need to go into who then became the scourge of the state.
Right.
Yesterday, they had a hearing because they're contemplating extending their exclusivity period for a couple more years.
Yeah, because no one's taking advantage of it, right?
No, people have taken advantage. They can't get open. And the problem is all the large players just sat and let the clock run out. And I made two arguments to him. I sent him a letter a few weeks ago, and I said, you need to make the hurdle not a time period, but getting these small social equity operators open, because if that becomes the hurdle, you will see the large players will step up to get them open so the large players can get open. And then I said, and then the other thing you better consider is the law of unintended consequences. And when marijuana becomes legal, which it eventually will be, in whether Congress does it or somebody sues and it goes up to the Supreme Court of the United States and you just heard one of the most liberal judges on the Supreme Court a couple months ago.
Conservative, Judge Clarence Thomas.
Judges, right. One of the most conservative judges basically say, I don't even know if marijuana is illegal anymore because of what the government has done.
Right. He said the federal laws are contradictory, I believe was his quote. Correct.
Yeah. Well, now you take a look when pot becomes legal, there is going to be such a deluge of big companies coming in that a lot of small operators may need to sell. And my argument to Cambridge was, you're not thinking about like the law of unintended consequences, because if you lock out the large players, you could see a whole bunch of your small players lose everything. Right.
You need a balance. That's really what it comes down to. And Michael actually talked about it. He says you can't move forward with a big tax because that just means those MSOs are just going to dominate the industry. They're trying to get it right, but nobody can figure out what that right is going to be. And maybe it is a small step like safe banking. It's what the lobbyists keep coming back to on a regular basis. Maybe we just need to open up the banks, leave it up to the states and deschedule it. And let me tell you,
that would be a phenomenal solution.
That is a solution. But the question is, can that get through Congress? That's still the key, right? I mean, you've got to be able to appeal to the people on one side that really only are looking at this from a money perspective. And then you have to look at the other side that's looking at it from a social justice perspective and figure out is there common ground here? And how do you create that common ground? I don't know. Do you?
Is there common ground? Yeah. Well, look, the number one job of a politician, Jimmy, is to
stay elected.
To get reelected,
right?
Stay in office. So it would be nice if they did what the will of the people is, and the will of the people across the country is very clear.
Yeah.
When you look at how many states have legalized marijuana for medical purposes, that right there means it should be descheduled or moved to a much lower schedule because the government's accepting the medical efficacy. And then on the rec side, I don't want to drone on. I think that it's time for the government to do something. If they put in the Safe Banking Act, that will. I disagree with Cory Booker, who's like, I don't want that. That's just piecemeal. Safe Banking Act means that now a few people could go to a bank and say, look, we'll give you an interest in our homes. We'll give you a second mortgage. Give us the money to open up a store. And I think you'll see more of the social equity applicants start to get traction because they'll be able to raise money in a multitude of ways, including with banks that may look at it and say, we think we actually understand the business and we're willing to lend against it.
Yeah. As someone who's a lot more savvy financially than I am, is taking a second mortgage on your house a smart business decision when it comes to, aren't you supposed to separate the business from the home?
Yeah, let's not have that discussion today, Jimmy. That's just,
I'm just saying, I think I remember somebody giving me advice along those lines when I actually owned a house. Okay.
There's a lot of factors there. It's a very risky move for an entrepreneur to do that. Investors, it's a little different because the investors will hopefully continue to have their income stream. The entrepreneur, when their business goes down, so goes their personal income stream.
Right.
So now you got a failed business and you got somebody with no income. How are they going to honor their guarantee or repay the second mortgage on the house?
Right. Right. Well, I do know this. We're getting closer and closer to the top of the hour. We've got a couple of guests coming on at the top of the hour. So I'm going to make a decision to actually take a little break here, get out a little early, and then bring in our two guests. I'm not even going to say who they are, because I want to make sure they're there, because I believe they are both at the New England Cannabis Convention, which is where we've got this footage going on. We're outside the Accounting Buds booth, and We also are checking on our live stream. And look, there's the Rev Clinics commercial. Like, support. It's amazing how every time we check in, there they are again. So anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more of Green Rush Live after this. Don't go away. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And you know, when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, "It's a whole new world of weed." But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
All right, welcome back to the Green Rush Live from the New England Cannabis Convention-ish in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and every Friday, I'm joined by my good friend,
David Rabinovitz.
And he's with us again. And again, this is kind of an anniversary show for us. This is 1 year after the first show that we did right in the middle of the pandemic in September of 2020. And now, of course, we're moving on to 2021. We want to welcome in 2 guys who have been with us in the past. One is David Cunic and the other is Chris Vaglio. They're both from Jersey area, right, guys? It's Jersey, right? Hey, yo.
Well, only New Yorkers call it Jersey.
That's right. Fair enough.
We're from Jersey.
If you don't make fun of my Boston accent, I won't make fun of the Jersey thing. All right.
Yeah, you gotta remember, Jimmy. My mom's from Brockton. My dad's from Worcester.
That's right.
I have an office in Portland, Maine. I still call it a bubbler. I still call it a grinder. I still say hot dog. I still say popcorn. But I say water. And when I order a water down up in Boston, they go, what do you want to order? I go, I want a water. They go, yes, order what? I go, water.
All right, you guys, I certainly got to know you, and I've been following you over the last year or so. David, you are speaking tomorrow at the New England Cannabis Convention, are you not?
Yes, actually, both Chris and myself are speaking tomorrow. We're very proud to say we're actually doing a nice 3-hour seminar tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. How to raise your social capital to raise capital for your company.
All right. And Now, can you, now that you've given us the tease, the time and all that, it is a separate admission if you want to learn, right? That's true, right?
That's true. That's correct.
And you can
It's
get those. Go ahead.
Jimmy, I was gonna say it's $150 to attend the workshop. And now it's not a seminar, it's a workshop, but it's interactive.
Yeah.
You will participate in the workshop. You will learn and be able to implement networking skills and fundraising skills the minute you're done with this workshop. And as we talked to some people today at NCIA that were debating whether or not to go, they said, well, what if I meet with you directly one-to-one? I go, well, you're going to be paying a lot more money for that. Or would you like to pay just $150, get both of us for 3 hours and truly learn stuff? So, because at the end of the day, Jimmy, we've talked about this before.
Yep.
Every dollar counts when you're an entrepreneur here in cannabis. You need to make every penny count. So that's why we want to make sure it's affordable to entrepreneurs. So we give back. Mark Shepard at NCIA is great. I'm very proud to say I've spoken at every NCIA event. And I'm very honored to speak at again this year and have Chris Vaglio of Rocket Growth Agency join me this year on stage. Super exciting.
So here's the $1 million question that you will not charge me $1 million for. Okay. How important is it to actually have the right content style for each social media platform? Because you can't put out the same piece of content. You can't run a 30-second commercial for traditional TV on your Facebook, on your YouTubes. It just doesn't work. It doesn't have the same impact. So I guess my question again is, how do you create content to fit the platform? And how important is that?
So I'm going to answer that question first. And I'm going to have Chris give a lot more detailed answer.
Okay.
This is why I'm a macro manager. And this is why I outsource stuff like that. So the short answer is it's extremely important. And as we teach everyone, failure to plan is planning to fail.
Right.
And if you don't have that content calendar for the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days, you're not going to be successful. But I know Chris is going to add some more details to that question.
Yeah, Jimmy, this is a really awesome question because this is something I actually get asked a lot. And when I do a lot of my one-to-one coaching and consulting with people, this is what we talk about. Mm-hmm. And so what I'd like to start with is it's important to always understand, where are your people hanging out, right? Where is your audience hanging out? Where are your potential clients hanging out? That's where you should be, right? That's where you should be producing content. A lot of times people get sucked into the trap right away of like, I've got to be on every single platform there is. I've got to be on TikTok. I've got to be on YouTube. I've got to be on LinkedIn. I've got to be on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth, all of them. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is you don't. You really do not. You have to be where your prospects are, where your audience is, right? Mm-hmm. So then that being said is once you have that dialed in, what you're doing is creating content that your audience wants to see. Not necessarily what you want, it's what they want, because that's how you're best serving and helping whoever it is you're looking, whether it's doing business or just growing an audience or, whatever it is. That's the number one thing to think about. And so you may be able to take that 30-second commercial, maybe you ran for broadcast, maybe there's a way that you can re-edit that, repurpose, recycle it, and reuse it for the platform of choice that maybe you're working with, whatever that is.
And Jimmy, I want to add one other thing. The question you asked, that's why I had a huge smile on my face when you asked the question, is because
that's a great question.
We're literally spending about 20 to 25 minutes on that exact question tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
At the workshop.
Oh yeah.
So
brilliant minds, guys. Brilliant minds think alike.
We think alike. I love it. I love it.
That's why we're doing this together.
And there's another brilliant mind on this conversation. David, are you with us?
I am with us.
I know. So David has a very unique background. He really is a financial analyst. Okay. He really is able to look at an Excel file and decide, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I look at an Excel sheet and I just get dizzy. I don't want anything to do with it. David, if you were starting, I know you are working on a special project. Let's leave it at that. What are some of the challenges that you see others in the cannabis industry facing as far as promotion or identifying what their audience is. Because a lot of people, this is the thing about demographics, guys, especially with cannabis. It's like, what's your customer look like? I'm like, I don't know. Everybody wants to smoke weed. Is it over 50? Is it 21 to 80? I mean, you talk about a wide demographic. There's very few industries that have as wide a demographic as cannabis does. David, do you want to ask a question? Do you want him to answer that one I just threw out there?
Let's let him answer the one you threw out.
I knew he'd say that. I love that about
Jimmy, that question.
So is that the second 20 minutes? Is that the second 20 minutes?
No. But I will say this though.
That's the extra workshop.
This goes back to though doing your due diligence and doing your recon work. I was just at the Cannabis Business Times conference in Las Vegas about 2 weeks ago, and they actually had 2 presenters of third-party data companies. Yep. And there's actually data out there now saying, okay, this age group, they prefer gummies. This age group actually prefers tinctures or capsules. A fun little fact that we learned was, doesn't make a difference if you're an independent, Democrat, or Republican, the numbers are still the same across the board for cannabis consumers. And so now we're actually getting the data in 2021, soon to be 2022. I got in this industry back in 2009. We didn't have this data.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and that's where the questions you're asking, it comes back to, okay, you can actually get those data points now and kind of figure out what demographic you really want to go towards.
Yeah. And you guys also know this about this product. Every human, every mammal that has an endocannabinoid system, human or not, it affects us all differently. And that's why I say you can't, as much as you can analyze data, it's got to be the most challenging product to do this with because it impacts everybody differently. There's not a lot of consistency in it, unless you could show me numbers that counters that.
And Jimmy, next week in Baltimore is the Cannabis Science Convention. As a medical professional, as someone that holds 2 medical licenses, I'll be attending that conference just for research, just not to network not to sell anything, but just to learn and just see what research is being done in other parts of the country, what's being done over in Israel. Because the more we can be educated and the more there's real research, then you know what? Once we have those data points, that also helps end with product placement as well too.
Right. And research is so important. And I saw recently in our news that follows this show at 6 o'clock, or We Talk News, I talk about California's new laws or new regulations, I guess it is, that they are going to allow research of state-grown cannabis. Now, licensed state-grown cannabis, as opposed to the good stuff from Humboldt County, right? But the point is, at least they're going to be looking at other cannabis grown than in the University of Mississippi that's been keeping it in a freezer for 7 years. I don't know if you saw that. So there's some progress on the research front, I guess, is where I'm going there. You see that as a positive too, right?
I do. I definitely do. And as someone that used to own testing labs in Las Vegas, Denver, Portland, Oregon, whether you're for cannabis or against cannabis, it's a medicine, and you want to know what you're putting in your body. Right. And we need to know how it's being tested, the heavy metals, the pesticides, just like anything else. You want to know what you're putting in your body. Right. And so this is a very positive note with what's happening in California for the whole cannabis sector, because we're taking another step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add one more quick thing to your question, is that as on top of the data, it also comes down to, yes, while there's a wide spectrum, like the audience is wide, you do want to think about what kind of experience do you want to create for your customer, right? So what is your brand? Like, what does it look like from, the entire experience, And so that's one thing that you could really focus on, and that will help you stand out and sort of differentiate yourself within the market, because it once again, what's the user experience? What's the client experience? What are you selling at the end of the day? And that is a big part of it as well.
Right. David, you got something?
I'm responding to somebody in the chat.
Anything in particular you'd like to share? Is Yogi in the chat? Let me just ask you, is Yogi there?
Yogi's in there. Miguel's in there. We've got a pretty active crowd today, just trying to keep track of what the comments are.
Do you want me to ask this guy for a question right here? It's going behind me. Sir? No, sorry. Just in case people don't realize it, that was footage taken earlier today. What was your impressions, guys, of the crowd at New England Cannabis Convention? Michael Correia from NCIA asked me, what kind of a crowd, and I go, for Friday, first day, it was a pretty good crowd.
So I'm gonna let Chris answer it first because of two different parlors of experience attending this show. So Chris, you answer it first, and I'll go second, man.
Okay. Yeah, and so in all transparency, this is my first NECAN convention attending, and it's been a really awesome experience from my perspective to be able to walk the floor, see the different types of businesses, the crowd, and I feel like there's a lot of energy, and I really feed off that. There's a lot of creativity going on, and that's just very exciting to me. And, so my first time experience with this convention has been really great. I've really been enjoying it.
So as someone who's been to every single NECAN in Boston, I'm very happy for NECAN, and I'm very happy for Mark Shepard that he now has a 3-day event. I remember this was like an afternoon event, and now we're at 3 days. Right. I thought the turnout was solid for a Friday, but it wasn't so packed where you felt unsafe or uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
Hand sanitation everywhere, which was great. And the other thing is too, it wasn't overly packed where you couldn't have that one-to-one conversation.
Right.
As someone who's been in the industry for over a decade, I was very happy to see some of my old friends, my old colleagues I haven't seen in a year or two that have booths and they're striving. I was very happy to see some younger entrepreneurs who have actually, this is their first ever cannabis event they got a booth at. So I was happy to see their turnout. And the only piece of advice I would tell everyone is just have your 60-second commercial down. Like we literally went to a couple booths and the guy's talking to you for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, so what exactly do you do?
Yeah.
You're talking to me for 10 minutes. Like, I don't want to be rude, but I got people I got to see and say hello to. Your booth intrigued me. I stopped by, but you've been talking to me for 10 minutes and I still don't know what you do.
That's right. By the way, David will tell you he's known me for years. He still doesn't know what I do.
So, and I will also say too, Jimmy and David, we're going to see, I think even a better turnout tomorrow.
I think tomorrow's really where you're going to see the public. Today's more of a, right.
Jimmy, today, both his phone and my phone started at 7:30 this morning. Wait, are you guys going to Boston? Yeah, we're already here. Wait, the show's still going on? Yes, the show's still going on.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that line, that actually leads me to the next question is about the October event in Las Vegas, the big one, MJ BizCon. Are you went last week or 2 weeks ago to the Cannabis Times one in Vegas, David? No problems. You were comfortable there as far as safety goes. Everybody's in masks indoors, right?
Let me put it this way. The security is a lot higher up, meaning that if you're not having a drink of water or this or that, even if you're attending a seminar, your mask stays on. You want to stand and ask a question, your mask better get on, and they'll even have the moderator stop and say, please put your mask on. Everything was good. I saw it at the Paris Casino and Convention Hall. They did a great job. There's also MJ Unpacked happening in Las Vegas as well too. That same time. And I got to meet with their CEO, George Jage. They're telling me what they're doing for their safety protocol. So I think it's gonna be a good turnout. And I feel comfortable going back to Vegas in October, which I will be attending, and I'll be there for a week. So I tell people, if you're on the fence on going, go. And people are asking, should I go buy a day pass for NECAN Boston? Yes, go buy at least a 1-day pass. And it's worth attending because you have a nice balance of both national brands and local brands, which is the best part about NECAN, is that you get the best of both worlds.
Yes.
Right. And you've got the public and the business in there as well, wandering around, which I think is always one of the unique factors. Now, are you both at the Atlantic City event coming up in a few weeks on the first week of October?
I will not be. I'm going to be out of town that weekend, unfortunately, because I didn't really want to go, but I'll be out of town.
All right. Well,
yes, I'll be there supporting my home state of Jersey.
Good.
Have some clients there who have booths. And, it's also, too, where I tell people, we look at New Jersey, Pennsylvania, it's coming hard, and it's coming fast.
Right. It definitely is. And I think Ohio is going to be on the ballot as well in 2022 is what they're pushing for there too. David, anything in that chat room? I'm going to keep checking on you, buddy.
Yeah, no, Jimmy, it's, I don't want to say all quiet, but it just, our guests are chatting back and forth with one another.
Yeah, there. And speaking of which, I think it's time we ask the two guys on camera about the next level caricature that they're. Is it a portrait cartoon? Is it a caricature? You know, there are two different things there. What is next level about? And I'm guessing those are your two images, guys, right?
Well, the t-shirt's a conversation starter. And Jimmy, you already know that I wear usually a big canvas pot leaf jacket at conferences.
Yeah.
The new purple jacket, which took almost 2 years to create, is making its debut tomorrow at NCIA Boston.
All right.
And yeah, so pretty much Chris takes a positive mental attitude, and Chris used to be in a punk band. And when you promote yourself, kind of like a band, Chris goes, "You mind if I make up t-shirts?" Sure, go right ahead. More than happy to. So yes, the character is us. Next level, Chris, we went back and forth on how to promote the workshop, and it's NCIAnextlevel.com. And if you go to that link, NCIAnextlevel.com, you can actually go and get a ticket directly there. And so this is all Chris's brainchild. This is what Chris does at Rocket Growth Agency.
Wait, you're actually saying there's a brainchild in there? There's a sorry, I couldn't resist.
There's definitely a child.
By the way, I relate to that, as you guys know very well as well.
Yeah.
It's a male thing. David, you know you could turn on that infantile moment anytime, right? David. Oh, he's got his, yeah. By the way,
Noonan.
David, Bueller.
You gotta understand, when Jimmy gets going, you can only try, you can't stop him, you can only try to contain him. And if you want to get an word in edgewise, you got to wait about 30 minutes.
All right. So go ahead. Go ahead, David. Ask our guests a question about either their workshop or, how to find funding in the industry, because everybody's looking for funding. Go ahead.
David, will you be at, well, I'll throw a different one out. Are you going to be at the NCIA New Jersey show in a few weeks?
That's what I just asked them that. Are you not paying attention?
I'm looking at the.
Remember, he was helping your audience, Jimmy.
Yeah.
David, I got your back. You're handling all the online stuff. And yes, I will be there at the one in Atlantic City. So if you're doing a live show there, I want to be on the show again in Atlantic City.
Well, I appreciate. I won't be doing a live show, but I'll be there covering it. How's that? Unless somebody would like to sponsor us down there live. That's another option. Obviously,
you gotta put it out there.
Yeah, you got to put it out there. Got to
put it out. I'll put it out there. We'll be happy to take this show on the road anywhere. Yes, I can whore myself out. I'm not afraid to admit that.
PMA,
Okay,
buddy. PMA, positive mental attitude.
And Chris is going to be out of town. All right, David. Now it's your turn to ask, because I'm going to get a drink from my refrigerator. It's your show, David. Ready, go.
So what do you guys want to talk about today?
Oh, God. You know what, David? Let's talk about this for a second, okay?
Yep.
People that are watching this and are debating whether or not to go to NCIA Boston, even just for one day, go. Okay? It's a good turnout for both the novice in cannabis and also the expert in cannabis. There's a little bit of something for everyone involved. And also the other thing I want to talk about too really quick is that at the end of the day, if you need money in this industry, if you need to raise capital in this industry, remember, you're not going to hit a grand slam every single time. It's okay to hit a bunch of singles. Okay. Like the Bull Sox play a little bit of small ball here and there. All right. Let's just get from base to base to base. So one of the biggest things we always want to tell people is that if you need a lot of money for your fundraising, if someone offers you a part of it, you might want to take that money.
Yep.
You might want to sit here and take some of it to help you keep growing your company.
Right.
So David, earlier you mentioned that there's a lot of hand sanitizer stations. So for folks who are on the fence about whether they're going to go, what are you seeing about people cruising the aisle? Are most of them wearing masks? They're not wearing masks?
Everyone is wearing a mask. I mean, heck, we were waiting in line for a salad. Yeah. And literally the woman stopped, literally making sounds, goes, "Sorry, sir, I got to get you a mask immediately." Literally stopped, got a mask, gave it to the guy. If you're walking the aisles, everyone's wearing their mask. And it's also then a level of comfort. Like if you're stopping for 5 minutes or so, like we would stop and talk to someone, and we were talking about 5 minutes, and we all looked at one another and said, "Okay, do you feel comfortable putting your mask on while we continue the conversation?" We did, and we pulled down the mask. Right. So it was being extremely respectful. Yeah. No one's trying to violate the rules. It was really cool. Like I ran out of hand sanitizer. I was walking by a booth. I go, "Hey man," I go, "I'm not really interested in your company, but you're giving away, free bottles. He's like, take one. You run out, no problem. Here you go.
Yeah.
Everyone wants you to feel safe and comfortable. If there any food giveaways, we were always giving it in a separate cup that you could throw away,
or it's already pre-packed.
Yeah, there was no sharing of anything whatsoever.
All right, so we're going to respond to one of the questions in the chat, which is, where's the convention? The convention is at the Heinz Center, correct?
Heinz Auditorium in Boston.
It's downtown Boston, just below the Prudential Center, easy to find. The Prudential,
right by King's Bowling Alley.
Right near King's Bowling Alley.
Is it where it used to? Well, yeah, I think King's actually closed, guys, on Dalton Street. I'm just saying.
Okay,
but
did not know that.
Yeah, no, I think it has. But I always say it's right across from the finish line of the Boston Marathon. It's on Boylston Street in Boston.
Yeah.
And if you don't know the Heinz and the Prudential Center, you really don't understand. But Mark Shepard said it very clearly. He said 90% of the people that go to NECAN are from Massachusetts and New England. You want to talk about percentage of masking. I mean, we've been playing footage behind us. You're really seeing almost 100% of the people walking by with masks on. You're not allowed in without a mask. There goes somebody else. But when you start yapping on the phone,
and they're stopping you. Like at one point, I took a sip of water, then I made a quick phone call, and someone very politely said, "Hey, don't forget to put your mask back up." Sure, no problem. My apologies.
Right.
And everyone's being polite about it. No one's saying, "Oh no." Everyone's being very polite. Yeah. Very kosher, very copacetic. And that's the one thing I like about NECAN Boston is that it's a community. Yep. And people want to help each other out. And we joked around because there was one booth we stopped by and there was 4 people working the booth. 4.
Oh my God, yes.
And they had this amazing marketing giveaway. I won't say what it was. Yeah. And I'm like, cool. Dude, this is an amazing giveaway. Chris is like, this is an amazing giveaway. They didn't want to talk to us. Yeah. They're all on their phones the entire time. And at one point, I literally stopped and I look at Chris. I go, Chris, I just don't think they want our business. And Chris goes, no, they don't want our business. Once we started walking away, then they put their phones down. We're like, no, man. Like, we're giving you a compliment. We're telling you what to do, and all you're doing is this.
Yeah, and that's what this workshop's about. I mean,
like, come on,
a big part of this workshop is talking about things like that.
Right. Well, that's basic human respect, too, guys. And
we're giving you a compliment, and then it's just like, no acknowledgement.
Right. And look, the other thing, when I do my little walking around interviews, whatever, wait, I'm going to try and see so my phone can actually show up. There's my phone. There it goes. It's there. Anyway, you guys know what a phone looks like. I asked him, I said, up to you whether you want to put, take your mask down to do the interview or not. I leave it up to them. I don't care. I'm wearing one, but look, it's a new era in trade shows. I like the fact, David, that you went to Vegas. You've come back now on the East Coast. You're seeing another show. You're there. You're seeing the respect factor. I think that's the most important thing. You brought that up again. I agree 100% on that. I guess the next question I'd like to talk to really before we let you go at the bottom of the hour, guys, is are you sensing the stigma is softening?
You go first. It's a really great question, Jimmy, because
that's 4. Just in case you're keeping track at home, I've got 4 really good questions in the last 20 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
No, that's awesome.
Maybe that's the standard response for every interview question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is. It's actually a reaction. So you actually start thinking about the question before you answer. It's a delay mechanism, but it's also a compliment to the person.
It's also called the acknowledgement rule too. Right. And we'll be teaching about the acknowledgement rule tomorrow at the workshop as well too.
Because I could just say, man, that's a terrible question. Why would you ask me that?
All right. So anyway, answer the question.
So anyway, let me answer. So anyway, you know what? I'm going to say, from my perspective of things, I feel like, at least for the people that I normally talk to a lot, and having come from much more of a B2B and more corporate, where my background was for 20 plus years, I can see that it's definitely softening on that side of it. The conversations are a lot more positive. There's a lot more wanting to get more information and the right information. So that's something that I'm seeing from a lot of the chatter I've heard from that side of business. And I feel like that's a positive thing. Not to say there's not a lot more work that needs to be done. There obviously is, but that to me is at least a positive sign.
So I'm going to have a 2-part answer. The first part is the fact you're seeing companies that are non-plant touching attending these events now, having an open mind about it, and want to actually have some of their business come from the cannabis industry is great. So that stigma is going down. However, though, I'm gonna go back to our t-shirts and the characters.
Oh, yeah.
People that do not know this industry very well or very new to it, someone looked at our t-shirts and like, what do you guys, some hippies? And we got that comment a few times today.
A couple times.
And we're like, no, we're actually hosting a 3-hour workshop. I've been in the industry for over a decade. I've done X, Y, and Z. And they go, what? Oh, no, we just thought you guys were some hippies or something with a funny t-shirt. And that's where it was interesting, because then people that have been in the industry for a while, they're like, oh, what's next level? Oh, you're doing a workshop. Oh, that's so interesting. What aspect of the industry are you in? Well, what aspect of the industry are you in?
Yeah.
So there's that level of respect. So that's where it was interesting for the Stigmata, where I told them today too, we're going to get some people that look at us in our t-shirts and just literally roll their eyes and not even want to talk to us. They're going to judge a book by its cover. And I bet you the people that do that are the ones who are extremely new to it. And that's what happened a couple of times today.
It did, 100%.
Interesting. Are you guys able to know, do you have a decent pre-sale so far?
The decent pre-sale, yes. You can buy tickets all the way up until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
We're really excited the fact that they actually gave us a slightly larger room, because when we did this show in Atlantic City, we had a huge uptick the night before.
Good. Well, everybody waits to the last minute to do everything in life anyway.
Well,
so,
that's what it is.
Right. And especially spending dollars these days. Everybody's watching everything. We get it. But it certainly sounds like it'll be a good show. I want to make sure that the two of us, we all connect after. You're 9 to noon. That's a 3-hour workshop.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. I'll be there. I don't know if I'll be there at 9, guys, but I'll definitely be there for after. And is there a recording of your event happening as well?
No, and 2-part answer. One, if you actually look at the NCIA rules and regulations, you are not allowed to videotape any seminar or workshop.
Right.
You can take a photo or two.
Yeah.
Right.
But you cannot do that. And then secondly, let's call a spade a spade. If you're paying your hard-earned money, and I've learned this lesson about 4 or 5 years ago, someone will record it and then they'll take and spread out to 10 or 15 people.
Right.
And it's not fair for the people who paid for it. So no, you cannot record it. And NCIA, in their rules, right there on the website, you cannot video record any seminar or workshop.
Yeah. Right. So the only way to see this is by coming in person to watch it.
And the biggest thing, Jim, remember, this is a workshop.
But
I was going to say, so, okay. So we got a couple more minutes. One little activity besides the personal elevator pitch that shouldn't be 60 seconds. Give it to me in 15 seconds, please. What is something that you might be working on in a interactive manner in this workshop for tomorrow? Can you give us a quick, or run me, or actually see if you can get David to actually talk?
So David, really simple. David, what's your favorite color?
Green.
Okay, now tell me what type of green? Dark green, light green?
Kelly green, Celtic green. Come on.
Yep.
I bleed green.
I'm sorry, David. I'm trying to answer David's question, but if you could contain yourself.
My name's Jimmy. Nice to meet you. Go ahead, Dave.
So Jimmy, to answer your question, tomorrow we're going to be playing the color game.
The color
game. If you don't know what the color game is, you're going to see how the color game is related to investor relations.
Yeah, we could have learned what the color game was today, Jimmy, if you hadn't interrupted.
and the other thing, the interactive, we'll be teaching you and reviewing your top 4 questions when doing a one-to-one meeting with a potential client or investor.
Okay, cool. I like that.
And another little tidbit we'll tell everyone is this: we will give you the top 5 green nuggets of information of what to do when raising capital.
Okay, fair enough. I took notes on that, so it'll be part of our interview after the fact. But anyway,
I like it.
Guys, first of all, David, and both you guys, you were along for the ride at the very beginning of this. In fact, Chris, I think I did one of your first ever podcasts, right, on LinkedIn Live or something. Or
you did. I think we did one earlier this year, like right after the new year. You came on and we did a nice live show together. So
you guys know that we've had tremendous success in the last 90 days with 225,000 views of our videos on YouTube. We've picked up thousands of subscribers. So I want to just again It's our year anniversary. It's time to say thanks to the people who have believed in what we were doing here from the very beginning. And I really appreciate the relationship we've had. And I hope it continues as we all continue to grow like a weed.
Jimmy and David, let us give you a quick plug. You to the audience listening.
Yes.
You hear Chris and I talk about all the time. LinkedIn. Jimmy and David, you guys are a prime example of taking advantage of LinkedIn, using what LinkedIn should be used for. And I'm so happy to hear about your views, how you guys are in the 6 digits.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to pretty soon get to the 7 digits. I know the way you guys are growing. So both kudos to you and David, because this is a great example of taking advantage of LinkedIn and what LinkedIn can do for your company and for your show.
Yeah. And congratulations on your anniversary. This is great.
Thank you. 50 shows. 50. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll see you guys tomorrow live, and we'll be back with the final half hour of Green Rush Live. Don't go away.
Appreciate it for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And you know, when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, it's a whole new world of weed. But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
On Green Rush Live for a Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and behind me is the New England Cannabis Convention. It goes on for the next few days in the Boston area at the Heinz Auditorium, and we will be checking things out at the Heinz all weekend long. But right now, I am always joined on Fridays by my good friend, David Rabinovitz. David, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jimmy. I'm still here.
And do you want to say anything to this guy? He doesn't realize he's in the middle of our show. Excuse me, sir. Do you want to just move on? Anyway, joining us on this last half hour of Green Rush Live is Brett Puffenbarger. I got it. All you got to do is say it phonetically, right, Brett?
Right, exactly. I actually have a funny story about that for later.
Okay, well, you could hold that story. Tell us a little bit about your background, because as we look you up, I love from the Bong to the Boardroom, right? And we have a mutual friend in common. And tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into why I was so excited to get you on the show today.
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way to put it is I'm somewhere in the intersection of marketing and public relations. So master's degree in public relations. I just graduated. I'm super excited about that. And,
congratulations.
Started in the Florida cannabis industry, started in retail, worked my way up into the, from retail to marketing for an extraction company, founded a couple of small consulting companies with successful exits, done a whole bunch of veterans advocacy stuff at the Florida level and the national level. And then now I am acting full-time as director of sales and marketing for the Foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards. So a accrediting body for upregulated compliance and standards levels in the cannabis space. I'm also currently acting as a strategic advisor for Beard Bros Farms. I think a lot of people are probably very familiar with them off of the West Coast. And then I've got one other secret one that I can't quite talk about yet, but it'll be equally as exciting in a few days.
Good. Well, there you go. And, we're all working in a very young industry. There's a lot of moving parts and moving very fast in some respects and then very slow in others. One in particular is, of course, the media side, which is where, I get to play and have played for the last 30, 40 years in my life. And whenever I see a story by traditional media that looks at either a research study or tends to embellish a story that I think is leaning in the misinformation side of things, gets me really upset. Brett, walk us through the Canadian study that was released this week, picked up by NBC, CNN, and Fox, and it put a charge into everybody that weed causes heart attacks.
Yeah, so I think the funny part about the study, if you will, is that it wasn't actually studying anything. It was looking at older data from 2017, 2018, and it was attempting to not draw this correlation at all. It was a study about something entirely unrelated, and they kind of came out with this pretty bombastic headline, along with the doctor himself, who came out with some bombastic claims that effectively he was saying, or the study or the article was saying, that young adult males 18 to 45, which is a pretty broad category of people to begin with, have an increased likelihood of heart attacks. And the headline was double the amount of heart attacks as the normal people. And it sounds really scary off the rip, right? Like, oh my God, like, look at this headline, like, holy crap, cannabis is killing people.
Right.
Except none of it's really true. Right. Like, so there is some correlation, and I've spoken to a few doctors since, posting about the article and kind of stemming a conversation on LinkedIn about it. Mm-hmm. There is some level of correlation or causation in cannabis use and elevated heart rate or some kind of heart palpitations. It's incredibly rare, and that's not what they were talking about in the study whatsoever. So basically what ended up happening is they had a study of 33,000 adults, 18 to 44, from the U.S. Center of Disease Control and Prevention. One, they're self-reported surveys. So these are people who are willingly answering the questions. And if you really dig into the data itself, it's those who were likely to say they used cannabis were also likely to say they smoked cigarettes, were also likely to say they used other drugs, were also likely to intake alcohol, were also likely to admit to eating fatty food diets or heavy fast food diets, or basically like the list of all of the stuff every human being knows causes heart problems. Also happened to be the people who were admitting to cannabis use. And again, it's a self-reported study, so there wasn't even like, it's not like it's a double-blind study or a peer-reviewed study or anything of value. It's just looking at survey numbers and then coming to this kind of grand conclusion.
Right.
The funny part of it, the one that's really blown me away, is that they're saying that 1.3% later had a heart attack, 0.8% did not.
Right.
So we're talking minuscule numbers, and the margin of error for said study was 0.5%, which, surprise, surprise, is the exact amount that these two numbers are different to begin with.
Right.
It's pretty mind-blowing to think that this is what made a scientific journal's publication standards, and then B, that mainstream media didn't do any sort of fact checking or looking at it. They didn't ask anybody from the cannabis industry, right?
Now, and this is what bothers me about traditional media. Now, David, you've now heard what this study did. We started to talk a little bit about this study and the role that the media, commercial media, played in this. When it comes to headlines, the headline is designed to get attention. It's similar to what I've learned, the power of the thumbnail in social media, right? How important that is, almost to the point where it's more important than the actual content in the story itself. That's, again, what bothers me. David, now that you've heard, you've got your mute on, so you've got to unmute. Now you can contribute. Now go ahead.
That's really fine, Jimmy, until you read the story and realize that the headline was misleading.
Right. But by the way, the reason why I get so upset is because it's the cannabis space. We understand that this is actually a factor in media today. The audience of traditional media is shrinking. So they're looking for ways to sensationalize, embellish. And the headline is the best way to get your attention. I'm not defending them. I happen to think I was pissed. It's one of the reasons why I started this company in the first place, because I wanted to give it a fair shot to those that are in the industry and let them tell their own stories. But Brett, you brought up some points about the comments that you were getting on LinkedIn. One of them came from perhaps one of the more recognized names in the business, Mara Gordon, on Zelda. I think she's on Zelda. She's on Zelda, right? So, and her comment was, correlation does not mean causation. How many times have we seen this in reports like this, though, right? You see it a lot, don't you?
You know what really bothers me about this whole thing is that this is taxpayer funded research. So like, I'm less mad at the media and I'm more mad at the fact that tax money went to have this quackpot doctor come up with whatever information he really wanted out of the thing. And something that I've seen floating around in the comment section on that post in particular is that statistics never lie, but liars love statistics.
Right. David, he loves statistics.
Absolutely. You can take statistics and spin any argument in any way you want. You missed earlier today when we were talking about this, and Jimmy's talking about it's only a 0.5 point increase. What's the big deal? And I said, but Jimmy, if you start off with 1.5 points and then you increase it by a 0.5 point, it is a big deal, right? Because you've increased it by 33%. Now, you got to understand the underlying numbers, but you could spin it one way and say, what's a big deal with a 0.5%? Or the other way, it's a 33% 33-fold increase.
And yet all they're doing is interpreting old data, right? And by the way, Brett, wasn't this a Canadian study?
Yeah, so technically it was a Canadian study, though I think it's one of the cases of cross-border studies where they're kind of trying to work together, as best I can tell. So it looked like some of the supporting scientists and doctors were American. It was using American data, but it was funded and put into the Canadian Medical Journal, which another doctor in the comments actually posted the full study. Right. And the study results don't actually match up to the executive summary at the top of the study that the guy is claiming they do.
So what we're saying is the attention span and headline, people read headlines, period. They think they know the story once they read the headline. That's dangerous.
That's actually something we talk about in the public relations world a lot. It's from the old newspaper days. It's called everything above the fold matters, meaning everything that would be above the fold in the newspaper. I know some people listening probably don't remember newspapers, but they existed. They were a thing. Now it's become this thing where headline and the first paragraph are 90% of what people are going to read. Right. And it's really funny when you look at it. You know, I bashed CNN pretty heavily in this, but the funny part is like Fox News basically copied their homework, or the one who I actually think was the worst was USA Today, who claimed this was a peer-reviewed study and it was new information. Really? Like, did you even read the thing, or did you read CNN's article and then add some details on your own?
Right. Yeah. And again, this is what pisses me off about traditional media is, and I'm going to use the word lazy because I really do believe it. I worked with people who were lazy. I know people who were lazy, and it bothers me. It just bothers me. Sorry, sir. But
we won't let it go. We just stuck with it.
But it also is a reflection, Brett, on our society these days that the attention spans of people down to about 7 seconds to get the message across. If you go to 30 seconds, forget about it. If you go to minutes or hours, you're really in trouble. It's one of the reasons why we take our long form content and we cut it up and repurpose it, because we recognize that. And that's what social media marketing, obviously, it is all about. David, in the world of media as a business, and I'm going to ask you this as a business consult here, the future, as audiences shrink and the consumer is more and more in charge of their use of media than ever before, because they get to consume it, they get to watch whatever they want, whenever they want. The days of appointment viewing are over, unless you're in the National Football League for the most part, or another major sporting live event. What does that say about our society, David? What does that say? If we're losing trust in journalists, if we're losing trust in our traditional media outlets, where are we going to go for the truth? You know,
you go right back to the media outlets. Once they look, when people get disenchanted, this is a real simple process. They stop watching the media outlet. When they stop watching the media outlet, ratings go down. When ratings go down, they can't raise the same amount of advertising dollars. Right. And then all of a sudden they say, what do we need to do to get the advertising dollars back up? They hire somebody to do a study and they find out, gee, your viewers think that you lie a lot. Now, if they want their revenue to go back up, they'll change, right? Fox News lies a lot, I believe, or sensationalizes, but their viewers like that. So they continue to do it because it drives up their dollars.
Yeah.
Which brings me to an interesting point on the fact that this whole thing was kicked off by CNN. Right. I think it would be
CNN lies a lot too.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty safe to say that CNN's viewer base is probably more heavily left-leaning than right. And I would also say it's probably pretty safe to say that most left-leaning people are pro-cannabis. Not to say right-leaning aren't, or not to say that libertarians aren't pro-cannabis, but by and large, cannabis, at least into the last couple of years, was a liberal issue or a left-wing issue. So it almost makes me think, like, did they have the B team on play at CNN where they didn't even think about their target audience? I could see a Fox News posting something like this way more readily than a CNN. Though something someone brought up, in the comment section of that post again was, well, either way, they got people talking about it, and at the end of the day, they delivered ads to people, whether they were pissed off about it or they were super stoked about it. Doesn't matter. They got you to click on the damn link and look at it.
Right. Right. And again, it's one of the things that people that don't understand how commercial media works. The product is audience. The product, it isn't a glass of, well, I don't even know if I can do this virtually, right? A glass of water. There's actually a plastic bottle floating around inner space here. It's eyeballs. It's how many people, how many times, it's reach, it's frequency. And because the consumer, again, gets to use and decide what we've got a self-fulfilling prophecy going on in our world right now. Who do you trust for your news? When I grew up, David, when you grew up, you remember Walter Cronkite. We trusted Walter because he reminded us of our grandfather, and our grandfather never lied, right? We just believed what he said. Brett, you've heard of Walter Cronkite, right?
Oh, I got you. I'm well aware.
Okay, fair enough. But you don't see that now with anchors on TV and the big three, the big 3, 4, whatever anymore. It's different. And
more recently, something like Hannity and Combs, where an admittedly right-leaning network brought on a very left-leaning person to play off of a right-leaning person, and they had healthy debate. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't happen anymore, right? Because of this, linear division of our world, and one of the things that bothers me is the labeling process. We're able to put labels on people because we're in America and it's a free society. That's what it's about, right? But just because I live in Massachusetts, you immediately throw me on the left side of things, right? That's not really fair if you're looking to judge or look at us. We're about talking. We want, and I've had some feedback from people in our chat room, David, who want us to get those prohibitionists on our air and let them talk and give them an opportunity. And I've said, have at it. Let me know. Give me your real name and your phone number and your email. Don't hide behind the anonymity that social media gives an opportunity to do. Will we ever see that again? I don't know. I just don't know. I worry about that.
I'd like to even see it within the cannabis industry. I would like to see the suits and the stoners have some open conversations. I would like to see the corporate guys versus the legacy guys have a conversation. I would like to see that even within our own. Hey, dude, what's up?
I keep trying to tell him we're doing a show here, buddy. Move on. Yeah, oops, sorry, didn't mean to.
But yeah, even within the cannabis space, like, let's call it like it is. We are not a homogenous group in every way. There are people who, David Palachuk, the guy who wrote Branding Bud, and I were just talking about this the other day to prep for his podcast that I'll be on about words. Like, you say legal, that could mean 10 different things to 10 different people. Do we call it adult use or recreational? Heck, you might as well start a fist fight in the industry if you start arguing about that. Call it marijuana, not cannabis, and watch what happens. Like, it's right. Even within the industry, we're not having healthy debate when we all have enough stuff on the same side to comfortably say, like, we are a community as the industry. Right. Why aren't we seeing that?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, Brett. And again, it's another reason why we enjoy doing what we do here. at Pro Cannabis Media. A reminder coming up in just a few minutes is our weekly Weed Talk News feature. It is a one-on-one interview with Mark Shepard from New England Cannabis Convention. That convention continues for the next few days at the Heinz Auditorium in downtown Boston. Yes, masks are required there. And there is a nominal fee to get in. It is open to the public. If you've never experienced a cannabis convention, it's really worth it because I remember my first impression walking into that convention center, and I just went, I had no idea that there was this many ancillary businesses that are looking to get into cannabis. That's what opened my mind to this. And of course, then I found out that there's no talk shows out there that are live to do this sort of thing. Yeah, we do it there. A lot of people do podcasts, but a lot of the podcasts have to do with how can I get high? How can I get really high? And how do I make it so high that I don't know my name? So, we try to avoid that here on our talk shows. But that is a story for the other day. Brett, how do people get to you? How do people find out about your podcast and your following? Because I know you have one.
So for the podcast, it would be the cannabisdetector.com. Most people will find me on LinkedIn ranting and raving. That's kind of the only social media I choose to use, and mostly because it's cannabis friendly and it's more business to business directed. If they care about standards and testing and compliance things of all sorts, all those fun alphabet letters like GMP people throw out there, they can come find some more information on focusstandards.org. That's probably about it for right now. Yeah,
that's right. And please say hi to Kristen when you talk with her next.
I will. Yeah, we'll be. When do we record? I thought we were recording today, actually.
Well, she's on West Coast time still, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. And Lord knows that's another challenge in the cannabis industry. It's like, okay, when was this call and which coast are we on? The poor Midwest gets completely forgotten. I can't even figure out who's in Central Time Zone,
I feel bad about that because I have my Outlook calendar set to West Coast and East Coast, and then people will throw out a random Mountain Time or Central Time, and I'm like, nope, I'm used to 3-hour blocks. I know 3-hour time difference only.
Hey, Brett. Really appreciate you joining us, giving us insight on that comment. You did a great job with it. You stirred up a whole bunch of stuff. You got my interest going. And then of course, we've got that, we both know Kristen, which I think is a riot unto itself. David, you with us?
I am with us.
You got any final thoughts on our 50th show?
It just went by so fast, Jimmy. It's like weed time. It's like we started only a few weeks ago.
And we'll be doing this again every Friday from 4 to 6. We run our Read Talk News at 6 o'clock. So Brett Puffenbarger, I'm going to do it. Brett Puffenbarger. Thank you. Thank you for coming on today on short notice. I really appreciate it. For David Rabinovitz, my undue appreciation for your commitment to this program and to continuing the conversation about cannabis. Before I sign off, I do want to send best well wishes to my 31-year-old son in North Carolina, Gabriel. He does turn 31 this weekend. He's one of those very special kids who was born on 9/11, not 9/11/2001. That was his 11th birthday. Do the math. He's 31 now. So I don't wish him a very happy birthday, even though I know he is battling this horrific virus that's out there right now. So please, please take care of yourself. I love you, Gabe. I love everybody in cannabis when you get right down to it. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Thank you so much again for watching. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. We'll see you next week and enjoy Weed Talk News coming up next. Coming up on Weed Talk News this week, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders tells it like it is at an Iowa town meeting.
What you are now seeing is a radical change of consciousness with regard to that war. You're seeing state after state after state legalizing marijuana. I would legalize marijuana nationally. I am supportive of that, but we are making some progress in state after state.
Another sign of progress? The in-person cannabis trade show is back. This time, the stop is in Boston, where NECAN returns for its 6th year and its first in months.
It's fantastic. You can call it a comeback. It's been 2 years since our last show.
The big keep getting bigger as Cresco Labs acquires a Bay State operation for $90 million. And a cannabis VIP event brings together an NBA Hall of Famer and a local 21-year-old college student who first met Paul Pierce 11 years ago. All that on We Talk News next. Pro Cannabis Media programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of We Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. So, have you told us your cannabis story yet? Every month, we want to hear your cannabis story. What role has the plant played in your life? You could win a great cannabis storage unit from YourStoryWithAnI.com. Just tell us your story. First up this week, the public comment period for the federal legalization bill has passed now that the September month is here, and the work now begins. One senator who has always been pro-cannabis is Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. At a town meeting in Iowa, he seems to be encouraged with the progress towards legalization state by state.
I think we're making progress. Look, my own view is that the so-called war on drugs has been an abysmal failure. It has destroyed God knows how many lives, disproportionately African American and Latino. What you are now seeing is a radical change of consciousness with regard to that war. You're seeing state after state after state legalizing marijuana. I would legalize marijuana nationally. I am supportive of that, but we are making some progress in state after state.
Another encouraging sign that the cannabis industry is finally emerging from the pandemic shutdown is the return of the face-to-face trade show. 2 weeks ago, it was in Las Vegas. This week, it's in Boston with the 6th annual New England Cannabis Convention at the Heinz Auditorium. The sound of construction workers working with staff, setting up trade show booths with familiar names like Rev Clinics, Green Bros, The Botanist, Trulieve, and of course our friends at Accounting Buds. All ready to go. No one is more ready than the founder of NECAN, Mark Shepard.
It's fantastic. You can call it a comeback. It's been 2 years since our last show, October 2019 in Maine. So yeah, it feels phenomenal to be back.
I mean, cannabis is all about that. It's about bringing people together. It's about healing people, sharing remedies, sharing experiences. More importantly, sharing knowledge and really differentiating the product and explaining what is best for each individual user and talking about it, answering questions, sharing experiences. This is what this convention is all about.
Like so many businesses, the pandemic hit the trade show industry so hard, but Mark Shepard reports that his numbers are equal to last show that they held back 2 years ago.
We've got 2 exhibit halls here in the Heinz. They're just about at max capacity. We've had people signing up even the last few weeks. The pre-sales have been flat with 2019, which was our best year ever, so we're really excited.
As far as COVID protocols go, Shepard believes his show will have no different exposure than going to the supermarket.
Well, if people don't know, there is a mask mandate in Boston, so everybody's taking great care to sort of mitigate circumstances as much as possible. We've got double sanitation set up. We're going to have touchless sanitation stations all over the place. Obviously, everybody's masked, and there's plenty wide aisles. There's going to be plenty of room. It's going to be no different than spending some time in the grocery store or CVS or anything else. Just take your reasonable care and caution, be respectful of everyone else, and we'll all have a great time.
NCIA is open to the public Friday through Sunday in the Boston area. Yes, the public is invited. Go to NCIA.com to purchase tickets and for more information. That's not the only big story in the Bay State this week. There's been a major acquisition of one of the original dispensaries in the Bay State area, and it's been acquired by Cresco Labs. Here's Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report.
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Last week, Chicago-based Cresco Labs completed its takeover of Massachusetts Cultivate. The deal was worth $90 million, and according to Cresco CEO and co-founder Charlie Batchel, it was an important step for expanding its presence in attractive states like Massachusetts. Batchel said in a press release, expanding operations in the most strategic U.S. cannabis markets is at the heart of our growth strategy, and we're thrilled to have the opportunity to show what can be achieved through a maximized footprint in Massachusetts. We have been thoroughly impressed with the Cultivate team and their quality of their operations. We look forward to a productive and efficient integration process to carry their historical strong momentum into the fourth quarter and beyond. This deal gives Cresco approximately 42,000 square feet in flowering canopy and also adds 3 operational dispensaries in Leicester, Framingham, and Worcester, bringing its combined retail storefronts in the state to 4. The New England Cannabis Convention is returning to Boston after almost 2 years. Along with the several hundred vendors that are there ready to go, NCIA is offering several separate ticket workshops. Mark Shepard, the co-founder and president of NCIA, explains the different workshops that are available this year.
We have 4 separate ticket workshops. They're workshops, which is the most we've ever had. Typically we have 2 or 3, but we have a Massachusetts Hemp Seed to Sale workshop. We have an actual certified responsible vendor training where dispensary workers can get their actual certification. We have a yoga and wellness one, and then we have one that's on how to market your brand and social brand in order to raise capital for your business.
The New England Cannabis Convention is September 10th through the 12th at Heinz Convention Center in Boston, starting at 11 a.m. Friday and Saturday and 10 a.m. on Sunday. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
In New York, a pleasant surprise as acting Governor Kathy Hochul nominates 2 key leaders for the new Office of Cannabis Management. Hochul nominated and the Senate approved the appointment of Chris Alexander as executive director. He was the former policy manager for the Drug Policy Alliance, and lawyer Tremaine Wright has been named the chair of the Cannabis Control Board for the state of New York. For a complete wrap-up of the holiday weekend in cannabis sales, here's Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report, who's reporting from Times Square this week. Deborah?
This is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. Cannabis consumers flocked to dispensaries on the Friday of this past Labor Day weekend, resulting in the 3rd largest day for cannabis sales in 2021. Unfortunately, that was the only good news for cannabis retail for the holiday weekend. Overall, sales dropped in 21 versus 20 for the last weekend of summer. Sales on September 3rd, that Friday, were up 10% over the previous 4 Fridays, and that's what drove this day to be the 3rd largest day of total U.S. cannabis sales so far this year. Acreage Holdings reported that Hurricane Ida caused extensive damage to its cultivation center located in Sewell, New Jersey. It was nearing completion of construction, but now the damage is going to significantly delay the opening of this cultivation center that had been planned for the first quarter of 2022. And finally, Halo Collective announced preliminary unaudited monthly net revenue in August 2021 of approximately $3.9 million. Halo said this was a 94% increase versus last year and was driven by continued organic growth and increased market penetration in California and Oregon, as well as contributions from its recent acquisition of Winberry Farms and the company's 3 Kush Bar retail cannabis stores located in Alberta, Canada. And that is your business update. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
In California, Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law a bill this week that will now allow researchers to start to study the cannabis grown in that state. Now, you might remember that up until a few months ago, only the weed grown at the University of Mississippi was legal to be researched. Now, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency will authorize other states' grown cannabis for research. That golden state also released new regulations for the legal cannabis industry, now governed by a Department of Cannabis Control. Even though the new rules won't go into effect in California until the end of September, it does look like some restrictions have already been lifted regarding exchange of product samples, as well as new definitions for non-vertically integrated companies and their ability to brand merchandise from other licensees. Now let's go out to Michigan. For our report from the new executive director of NORML in that state, he's our own Michigan Cannacaster, Rick Thompson. Rick?
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Senator Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor has introduced a new bill. Michigan cannabis regulators would no longer be allowed to deny a person a medical cannabis business license based on their moral character and reputation, or prior marijuana convictions under a newly filed Senate bill. SB 619 would strike statutory language in the medical business licensing program, and it had lines clarifying that people with marijuana felony or misdemeanor convictions are not automatically disqualified from participating in the medical business program. When we drafted the recreational cannabis laws, we specifically removed these silly business requirements, but they're still in the medical marijuana business program, and that's where Irwin wants to strike down the language. And Monday was Labor Day, and Michigan celebrates that holiday with a walk across the Mackinac Bridge. The 5-mile-long bridge connects the upper and lower peninsulas of the USA's most watery state and is normally closed to pedestrian traffic. For the past 8 years or so, Michigan NORML and other groups have banded together and presented a cannabis community contingent in the throng of walkers. This year, NORML combined with the Michigan United Caregivers Association and offered T-shirts to all who attended. It's our tradition of giving back, and that includes free coffee, donuts, and water to anyone who visits our area at the Trailhead Welcome Center. It's also a tradition that the governor leads the walk across the bridge. And this year she did. The governor was walking south while a group of us was walking north. Gretchen Whitmer smiled and waved at the crowd. Cannabis advocate Susan Fisher was wearing skin-tight leggings with cannabis leaves on them. She shouted to the governor, "I voted for you." The governor shouted back, "I like your pants." 8 years ago, the governor was Republican Rick Snyder. He never would have made a comment like that. Now, the bridge walk may be a tradition unchanged, but the times, they are a-changing. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
The summer months continue to be a boon for the state of Maine's cannabis market. August saw another sales record set in vacation land as Maine's 53 licensed adult use dispensaries sold over $10 million of weed in 1 month. That generated another $1 million in tax revenue for that state. A total of over $5 million in taxes has been generated since the cannabis adult use market opened in October of 2020. That grand total of weed sold in the state of Maine is now over $48.9 million. Another state that seems to set a record every month is in Illinois. That's where Margot Vaselli has our report from that state. Margot?
I'm Margot Vaselli from Margowana with this week's Weed Talk News Report from Illinois. The scramble to Illinois dispensary licenses continues. Many await to hear from the state on their decision of the outcomes that will determine who are the true Illinois dispensary license holders. Even though Illinois has announced its winners of these licenses, many are sitting on the edge of their seat, awaiting to hear if they get to keep them or if there will be a redraw. Others believe that there will be just another additional add-on of licenses to be offered. Last week, Toy Hutchinson, Illinois' senior advisor to the governor of cannabis control, announced that they would create new licenses beyond the 185 to cure the clerical errors in license lotteries. It's really difficult for anyone to stay hopeful in this roller coaster situation, the big players being the most numb in handling these challenges. That's the Illinois Report. I'm Margot Vaselli for Weed Talk News.
Two stories about research on the cannabis front. One is getting a lot of play on major U.S. news networks like Fox and CNN and NBC. It's an uncontrolled study from Canada on the impact cannabis smoking can have on your heart. These researchers looked at data collected voluntarily from 33,000 Canadian adults. Of those adults, 17% used cannabis monthly, and 1.3% of those users had a heart attack, while only 0.8% of non-cannabis users in that same group reported the same issue. Now, this comes just weeks after another study claimed that occasional use through smoking flower had little or no harm on your health. Interestingly enough, that study was not reported on or is highlighted as much as this one. We'll be talking about the differences in reporting on cannabis research through the media this week on Friday's Green Rush Live. The other research study released this week looked at data compiled from 1975 to 2020 about cannabis and other drug use and alcohol consumption on college campuses. Guess what the biggest conclusion was? That cannabis use has increased over the past 5 years, especially in legal states, and alcohol use has declined. Now, that study also concluded that the pandemic drastically changed the way young people interact with each other. It seems social distancing is a great way to limit the way young people interact. You think so? Now it's time for our Vermont report with our green nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan. Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont report. The Magic Man CBD Company's fundraiser for Abenaki Sustainability canceled their September 12th food and education drive for the Global Indigenous Fund. In coordination with the Pennywise Foundation, the Global Indigenous Fund was created to help combat environmental and socioeconomic threats to tribal nations and Indigenous communities globally. You can still donate by going to magicman.com/Global Indigenous Fund. The Vermont Cannabis Nurses Association has put out a community call requesting naked cannabis farming pictures for a 2022 calendar project, with proceeds to benefit Vermont patients. So whether you puff in the buff or want to show off the buds and bods, send pics to Kathy at nursegrown.com to get your pics and kicks in the calendar. Chef Bobby of Hot and Heady had a rush hashana with all-you-can-eat infused dinner and family recipes going back generations. With homemade challah, mom's duck fat matzo ball soup, potato paprikash, and prime brisket, attendees were full and flying high. The Cannabis Control Board subcommittees met for the first time this past week. The subcommittee meetings will only be open to the public in person, and unlike all previous meetings, will not be live streamed. So activists take note and show up to the Capitol masked and ready to represent. That's the Vermont report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
It looks like the state of Maryland will be adding adult use of cannabis to the ballot questions in 2022. And now, of course, the most important thing is to make sure that the question is clear for all voters. For the rest of what's going on in and around our nation's capital, here's our DC report with Vote Pro Podcast, Phil Adams. Phil?
With the Weed Talk News, DC report. A leading federal regulator is calling for swifter action to protect financial institutions serving the legal cannabis industry. Rodney Hood, a board member and former chairman of the National Credit Union Administration, criticized Congress for not acting quickly enough to legalize cannabis at the federal level, which he considers inevitable. Hood called for the formation of an interagency work group to speed up the process of closing this federal policy gap. Appointed by President Trump in 2019 to head the NCUA, Hood slammed congressional inaction as an abdication of legislative responsibility that he calls, quote, simply ludicrous. The NCUA is an independent federal agency that provides deposit insurance to credit unions. The American Medical Association this week joined a growing chorus of national research institutions in concluding that legalization of cannabis does not lead to increased usage among young people. In a study published in the Journal of the AMA, researchers found that legalizing cannabis for adult use did not correlate with an increase in youth consumption. Rather, the data showed the overall effect on adolescent cannabis usage to be, quote, statistically indistinguishable from zero. Their findings were generally consistent with recent studies by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Center for Education Statistics, and the National Institute on Drug Abuse. A group of Maryland lawmakers met this week to discuss plans for a 2022 ballot initiative to legalize cannabis for adult use and to implement a regulated marijuana market in the state. The House Cannabis Referendum and Legalization Work Group was appointed by Maryland House Speaker Adrienne Jones. The work group was tasked with identifying lessons learned from other legal states and crafting legislation for a ballot initiative to put the question of cannabis legalization directly to voters. Maryland legalized medical cannabis in 2012 and decriminalized cannabis possession in 2014. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Now, we all know that interstate legal commerce of cannabis is prohibited even among legal states. However, over the past few years of reporting on the cannabis news, we seem to hear a lot about cannabis being sent through the U.S. mail, FedEx, UPS, or other carriers. Sure enough, UPS turned over a large parcel of weed to the town of Geneva, Wisconsin's police department. They immediately posted on their Facebook account that they're trying to find the rightful owner of the parcel of pot. Now, while they've had received hundreds of comical posts, no one has claimed the parcel. Good move. And finally tonight, sports figures have always been looked up to by young people. After all, as a kid, you could shoot a basketball, throw a baseball, or kick a soccer ball just like the pros. And there's no better role model than a bigger kid for a younger one. Well, what happens when those kids grow up to be 21-year-old college basketball players? Now, their role models usually are out of sports, and these days some are endorsing an adult product like cannabis. So what do? Well, you accompany your old college professor to a VIP event sponsored by Hubcraft to meet your role model. That's what I got to do with Trevor McLean from Boston, a senior at Emerson College just a few weeks ago when Paul Pierce was in town for a VIP event with Hubcraft.
Been in the space for the last 5-6 years. I'm excited to launch my brand here, in a place I call home. And with the help of Hubcraft, all you locals here, thank you, once again, and it's gonna be a great time.
That's NBA Hall of Famer Paul Pierce, and yes, his line of craft cannabis will be available at the Hubcraft dispensary in Holyoke when it officially opens later this year. In the meantime, Paul was in town for a publicity tour, and there, on the cover of the Boston Herald newspaper from 2010, was a 10-year-old named Trevor McLean. He was hugging the sneakers of his basketball idol, Paul Pierce.
So I was 10 years old, and my mom offered to bring me to an event that Paul Pierce was having to basically help child obesity and to give kids a lot of exercises to do that could help to, set up a bunch of food stands and teach them about the right different foods to eat. So I was just 10 kind of volunteering there, and Paul Pierce was obviously, my biggest idol, like from probably 10 or probably like from 8 to 11 years old. I was dressing up as him for Halloween, doing all these projects on him. He was just my idol. So yeah, I was pumped to be there. And it was like midway through the event, I think he got up on stage to talk, and I was standing right at the edge of the stage. And thank God I was 10, because he had a lot of security there, and definitely a lot of security near me. So when he kind of walked over to like the edge of the stage, he didn't really see it, but I lunged forward on the stage. Just had to give him a hug. You just had to feel it.
Now, the two had never met until that event, and it took some serious positioning to bring these two together again 11 years later. Now that Trevor is 21, he got a chance to meet Paul face-to-face in Boston at the underground back room at Yvonne's, the site of the old Lockover restaurant.
That was a fun day, though. That was a fun day. I love it.
Yeah, I did. I mean, he was super surprised, and I was pumped that he kind of went about it like that and reacted like that, because I don't know. I mean, you are right. I am 21, and it could be a picture, but he was super cool about it, and I think it was actually like a fun moment for the both of us, because he reacted. Even back then, he was super nice about it, and it made him have a good chuckle. So yeah.
That's why we say it's a whole new world of weed out there. That's Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe all of the PCM produced programming. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.